Good afternoon, and welcome to our series of the Women of the Gospel, as they lead us to Jesus. We're on our way to encounter the baby Jesus in Bethlehem. Today, we are going to speak about a mother's love, a mother who loves her sons. And you're going to get a couple of clues in this boat chapel. One is this man here in the icon. I think it's very hard to see with the sunlight. But this man is James, the son of Zebedee, Jacobus in Latin. See, he's carrying his water jug and he's heading off the Camino de Santiago. In this chapel we have all the apostles as icons, and also Jesus and Mary. We had a wonderful Chilean artist who did these, who has Greek Orthodox and Arabic artists also in his background. Now, here is the Sea of Galilee where these men were called. We're going to have to cross to the other side to see the brother of Jacobus, James's brother. So we'll go past by the altar. And I just want to point out a little detail on this altar. We have a relic. I'm going to lift up the cloth here. Under this we have a relic. You see that little metal with the cross in the middle? Under that is the relic of Saint Mary Magdalene, which was brought to us as a gift from La Baume in France, where it is believed her body was buried, an ancient tradition. And they brought a little piece of the skull. Now, there have been studies made in that area, and they have found first century ruins, and also they have found that the body, right now just the skull of Mary, is of first century. So they've sent us a little piece of her bone, of her head. And here is the Mary icon. And now we find the brother of Jacobus, Johannes. You know who he is? John, the beloved disciple of Jesus. And he's carrying the gospel, which is the gospel that he wrote, and also he wrote the book of Revelations. Now these two brothers traveled with all the other apostles. Here we have Matthew, and then we have Simon the Zealot, and so on, all the other apostles who accompany them. Someday you'll come here and you'll see these beautiful icons. Then we have Andrew, who we celebrated the other day on the 30th of November. And then we have Judas, the good one, Jude. And then we have Thomas with his hand up because he said, I want to touch the wounds in his hands, put my hand into his heart, into his side. And then he did that, and he got to be the first to proclaim his faith, kneeling before Jesus. He said, my Lord and my God. But so we are going to talk today about the two brothers, John and James. These are special followers of Jesus. We've already met them. They were with Talitha Kumi in her house. They were the ones that Jesus allowed to come into the house. But here is the atrium in honor of women, And today we're going to focus on the mother of James and John. She is a woman of Galilee who lived very near here. And these apostles were from a local place. Some traditions say they were from Tiberias, some of the mystics. Well, there's no historic evidence of anything at the moment. So here it says Salome, the mother of the sons of Zebedee. And this woman is a very fervent mother. I think her sons took after her because Jesus nicknamed them sons of thunder. She must have brought them up well. She and Zebedee were good parents, and they probably followed the law of God in their home. And so they are good young men who are ready to be called and formed by Jesus. So as we have a beautiful chapel of the two boys, her two sons that were the apple of her eye, we're going to take this beautiful mosaic today. Well, you could say Peter and Andrew, or you could also say James and John, because these were called. They were called by Jesus, and they followed him. And look at that moment. I love this icon, this mosaic. It has such beautiful detail. You see Jesus stretching out his hand as if inviting, not telling them what to do, but inviting them. And now I want to focus in on the two brothers. Just think of them today as James and John, and let's look at the faces. You see those eyes? Amazing in a mosaic to be able to get that detail of expression. They are in awe at the person of Jesus. They are, as it were, in suspense. They want to think it through. If they follow Jesus, they're going to have to leave those nets that they're gripping. See that tight grip on the nets? They're going to have to leave behind their boat and their family, if you want to think of that behind them, those people as their family. Behind that again, their town. And I like to look up at the sky because those are the birds like the ones we saw this morning. They're going to have to leave their dreams. But they also know if they follow Jesus, look behind Jesus. Everywhere he goes, the desert will bloom. This is the assurance that they have in their hearts. Their lives will be fulfilled. And so here they are at that decisive moment. And now we turn to think of their mother. As we look at these boys and think of their calling and their vocation, we think of their mother who raised them. Now there's this moment when they're in the boat with their father, and Jesus comes by, and that's the definitive call. They probably met him a few times before. John must have come home speaking without stopping about Jesus when he first met him, and that we have in John's own gospel. And even remember the time of the evening it was, and they stayed with him the whole day. So Jesus said, who do you seek, Who are you looking for? Come and see. And this beautiful answer that Jesus gives them, where do you live? He's not going to just chit-chat with them. Enter into an encounter. Come and see. What did John tell his mom that evening when he got home? When they were having dinner and he was ravenous, he was hungry. But even then his food was getting cold on the plate because he couldn't stop telling them about what had happened. And he would say, he is the most amazing rabbi I've ever met. There's nobody like him. It was an afternoon that was so different to any other afternoon I've ever spent in my life. And the mother would be listening and saying, well, son, that's great to hear. She's delighting to see the light in his eyes, the joy, the peace, the great expectation in his heart. She knows he wants to spend more time with Jesus. And maybe there are other moments when Jesus passes by and says hello. But the one day comes when Zebedee comes home and says, honey, they're not coming home anymore. What are you talking about? Our boys. The rabbi came by from Nazareth and he called them. He said, come after me and I'll make you fishers of men. And they looked at me. And what did you say to them? Well, I said to them, you know what's in your heart. You make your own decision. I'll support you guys. I'm still strong. I can do okay here at the fishing industry. You go ahead. And with one leap, they were out of the boat and following Jesus with a huge smile on their faces. And then Salome, as she is known, would have nodded and said, I could have guessed that. Sooner or later, I knew they were going to follow him. And so the amazing thing is, when the time comes and the women also follow, like it says in Luke 8, 1-3, Salome seems to be among them. At least certain parts of the time, she's certainly with the group of women, but maybe she's there continually. Maybe Zebedee said to her, well, why don't you go and help Mary Magdalene and the others with the food and all the rest of it? You got 2 boys there to feed. And she wouldn't have waited a moment. She wouldn't have needed much insistence. She was delighted to go with her sons. And Zebedee was a good man, I think, to let his boys go and then his wife following Jesus. And so the next part of the story that we know of in the gospel is when Salome comes up to Jesus one day and she says, you know, you're talking a lot about your kingdom. The kingdom is at hand and the kingdom is like this and that. It sounds like a beautiful place. You know, I want to ask you a favor. Could you have my boys sit one at your right and one at your left in your kingdom? That's what I'd like. And I would ask you to do that for them. Well, the boys are there listening to their mother. Maybe they were mortified, we don't know. Or maybe they were delighted. Maybe they put her up to it. There are many theories about this. But in any case, she asked the question. And Jesus didn't answer her directly. He answers them. Are you ready to drink of the cup from which I will drink? Yes, we will. They had no clue yet. He said, well, you will drink my cup, but the place on the right and left are reserved for those that the Father knows who they are. Salome learned a good lesson that day. And as time went on, she learned that Jesus wasn't here for a powerful kingdom. She probably already knew that in her heart. She knew it was a kingdom of goodness, of justice and peace. The kingdom of God. What more does a mother want for her sons than to be close to Jesus? I don't blame her at all. I think she was quite hilarious and great that she went and asked him that. Fair play to her, to intercede for her boys. And yes, John was always very close to Jesus. We know at the Last Supper, Salome's son laid his head on Jesus' bosom, could hear his heart beat. And much more, the whole experience of being loved by Jesus. John seems to have understood what it is that the Lord has come to be our spouse, our divine spouse who wants all our presence, all our love, all our attention, who wants us to be fully there. And it's very beautiful to see how John deepened in his relationship, and Salome, the mom, would have been watching that. I remember when my brother, Father Kelly, went off to join the novitiate, and how happy he was, and his letters were just so beautiful. We'd all gather and we'd read them over and over again. And when we went to visit him, well, his feet were barely on the ground. He was so happy. And every time we went, he seemed even happier, if that could be possible. And I'm sure Salome watched her sons like that, like my mom watched my brother fall in love with the Lord more and more every day. And Salome was very pleased to see her sons turn out as they did. And though James wasn't at the foot of the cross, John was there, and Salome was probably there too. And then we know that the next thing that happens is, of course, the suffering, the tremendous suffering of Jesus, and any mother. And she's standing there beside Mary, the mother of Jesus, just a few years older probably than her John. Jesus was only 33, and John, maybe he was a teenager or so, but she would have looked at Jesus on the cross, at Mary, the mother, looking at him. She would have looked at her own son John, transfixed with sorrow, looking at his divine master. She herself was beside herself. So much horror in front of her eyes, but she also noticed that love was greater. The love of God, so powerful, transmitted in Jesus' passion and death. Father, forgive them. Today you'll be with me in paradise, he said to the good thief. And he looked at her son John, and first he looked at Mary, and then John, and over and back. And then he said to Mary, behold your son. What did Salome feel? That Jesus is entrusting her son to Mary, his mother. Well, I don't think she felt jealousy. I think she felt highly privileged. I think she felt this was so very special. And yet so painful, but so beautiful. And how John approached Mary with the tenderness of a true son, with kindness, with total reassuring manhood, stepping up to be strong beside Mary. And at that moment, Jesus, still suffering, cries out, my God, why have you forsaken me? Beautiful psalm that ends up with, I trust you, God, you always come through. This thing of being on the cross and at the same time sure of God's victory and the glorious triumph of the Lord. And she was there when he gave his final breath. And when they started to take him from the cross and lay him in the mother's arms, and the sorrow of Mary just pierced the heart of this mother. Mothers understand mothers like nobody else. She would have been a great comfort for Mary that afternoon. A silent presence, so loving, so caring, so attentive. Understanding that the heartbreak of Mary was so great that none of them, though they were all heartbroken, could even get near the suffering of the mother. And then the long stretch of hours into the night, after they laid him in the tomb, and the next day, full day of Shabbat, quiet. What did they do all day? Maybe these mothers talked. Maybe John listened. And they spoke. And they asked Mary about her son, and she told them things about his childhood and all her memories. And they share the highlights of the ministry and the beautiful moments with the Lord. And then it becomes dusk and way into the night. Well, imagine the next morning, Mary, Salome is out there too with the nard, with the herbs to bring to the tomb to finish anointing the body. And wow, what an amazing thing that the Lord surprises them. All these women, he came to meet them too. Not just Mary Magdalene, there's also the apparition with all those women that are going, they're called the mirror bearers in the Eastern tradition. And he greets them and they're just so blown away. And now they have a mission to go tell the brothers. And we know that they weren't believed. They were not believed. They said, who knows what they said, housewives' tales or something. But Jesus then reprimanded them. You should have believed them. I sent them. I sent the women. Their witness is valid. So today we are here and we are going to have our own little moment now to sit down for a cup of tea with Salome and to ask her to tell you the story of her boys, the story of her own encounter with Jesus, the gaze of Jesus. And she will tell you then, now go talk to him. Go to Jesus. Sit with him. He understands you. He knows your heart. He knew mine as a mother. He never reprimanded me for wanting something special for my boys. But he redirected my heart to seek what was truly worthwhile. To be in God's presence always. So enjoy your encounter with Salome, who will lead you straight into the encounter with Jesus. God bless you.